Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Hollow Victory. Vernon Salas stood in the floor-to-ceiling windows of his downtown office, watching the city lights blur into watercolor streaks against the November rain. At 42, he'd built Salas Consulting from a one-man operation into a firm that commanded 7 figures per client. The view from the 34th floor should have felt like triumph. Instead, it felt like a gilded cage. His phone buzzed. Another text from Lindsay, running late. Again, Vernon pocketed the device without responding. His wife had been running late for the better part of 2 years. Late to dinners he'd reserved months in advance. Late to their anniversary. Late to caring about their marriage. He'd tried everything: couples therapy, surprise getaways, cutting back his hours. Nothing worked. Lindsay always had the same complaint. He was married to his work, not to her. Maybe she was right. Vernon had thrown himself into building something that mattered after growing up in a house where his father's gambling addiction had cost them everything. He'd watched his mother work 3 jobs while his father pissed away their future at poker tables and racetracks. Vernon swore he'd be different. He'd be the provider, the rock, the man who never let his family down. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd become so focused on financial security that he neglected emotional security. Burning the midnight oil again, Jonathan Blake appeared in the doorway, Vernon's business partner and oldest friend since college. Jonathan was everything Vernon wasn't. Easygoing, social, happily married with 3 kids. It's 8 o'clock on a Thursday, V. Go home to your wife. Vernon turned from the window. She's out. Girls' night with Kim Skinner. Jonathan's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Again, 3rd time this week. Vernon grabbed his jacket. But you're right. I should go home. Big party on Saturday anyway. The big 4-3, Jonathan said, forcing cheer into his voice. Linda's making her famous chocolate cake. The kids are excited. Vernon smiled genuinely for the first time that day. Jonathan's wife Linda and their children were the family he'd never had growing up. Tell them Uncle Vernon expects presents. Big ones. As Jonathan left, Vernon caught something in his friend's eyes. Concern, maybe pity. He filed it away, another data point in the growing collection of things that didn't add up. The drive home to their house in the suburbs felt longer than usual. Vernon had bought the 4-bedroom colonial 2 years ago as a surprise for Lindsay, thinking a fresh start in a new space might rekindle something. She'd smiled and thanked him, then immediately started redecorating, spending $60,000 in 3 months on furniture and art. The house was dark when he arrived. Lindsay's Mercedes wasn't in the driveway. Vernon went inside, loosened his tie, and poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey. He'd learned to drink good scotch from his mentor, Albert Anthony, the sharp-minded attorney who'd helped him incorporate his business and become like a surrogate father. Albert had taught him that success meant nothing without character, and character meant keeping your word even when it cost you. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Albert. Need to discuss something. Coffee tomorrow at 7? Vernon replied with a thumbs up, then scrolled through his messages. Lindsay had posted on social media 30 minutes ago a photo with Kim at a downtown bar, both women laughing, cocktails in hand. The location tag showed a place called the Meridian, an upscale lounge Vernon had never heard of. He studied the photo more carefully. Lindsay looked radiant, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her smile genuine in a way it hadn't been around him in months. She wore the emerald dress he'd bought her for her birthday, the one she'd claimed was too fancy for anything we do. Vernon set down his phone and finished his whiskey. Tomorrow he'd meet with Albert. Tomorrow he'd figure out what was eating at Jonathan. Tomorrow he'd try harder with Lindsay. Tonight, he'd sit in the dark and wonder when trying had stopped being enough. Chapter 2. The Truth in Coffee. Albert Anthony's office was in an old brick building downtown, the kind of place that smelled like leather and old books. At 70, Albert should have retired years ago, but he claimed the law was in his blood. He'd never married, never had children. The firm was his legacy. Vernon arrived at 7 sharp to find Albert already there, 2 cups of black coffee waiting. "You look like hell," Albert said without preamble, gesturing to a chair. Good morning to you too, Vernon replied, sinking into the leather seat across from Albert's desk. Albert studied him with the same piercing gaze that had intimidated countless witnesses. How long have you known? The question landed like a punch. Known what? Don't play stupid, Vernon. You're many things, but stupid isn't one of them. Albert slid a manila folder across the desk. I had my investigator do some digging. You need to see this. Vernon's hands were steady as he opened the folder, but his stomach dropped as he flipped through the contents. Photos, dozens of them. Lindsay meeting a man at restaurants, hotels, shopping together. The man was maybe 35, handsome in that generic way that came from expensive haircuts and gym memberships. In several photos, they were kissing. His name is Chad Harris, Albert said quietly. He's a real estate developer, or so he claims. My investigator found some interesting inconsistencies in his background. Vernon's voice was calm, almost detached. How long? 8 months, as far as we can confirm. Maybe longer. 8 months. Vernon set down the photos, his mind racing through the timeline. The redecorating, the girls' nights, the distance. It all made sense now. The puzzle pieces falling into a picture he'd refused to see. There's more, Albert continued. Chad Harris isn't his real name. He was born Chad Hartley in Florida. He's been married twice before. Both marriages ended in divorce after short periods. Both ex-wives claim he targeted them for their money. He's never successfully developed any real estate. He's a con man, Vernon. A very good one. Vernon looked up. And Lindsay, Albert's expression softened. I'm sorry, son. She's planning to leave you. My sources say she's been talking to Kim Skinner about it for months. They're waiting until after the holidays. She wants to maximize the settlement. The betrayal cut deeper than Vernon expected. Not just the affair. He could almost understand that, could trace the path that led there through his neglect and her selfishness. But the calculated planning, the cold manipulation, that was something else entirely. She doesn't know that you know? Albert asked. No. Good. Albert leaned back in his chair. Then we have time to prepare. I've already drafted preliminary paperwork. We need to protect your assets, Vernon. The business, your savings, everything. She's going to come at you hard. Vernon was quiet for a long moment, staring at the photos. His mind, the same analytical mind that had built a multi-million-dollar consulting firm, began working through scenarios, possibilities, outcomes. No, he finally said. Albert raised an eyebrow. No, we're not filing first. We're not doing anything yet. Vernon looked up, and Albert saw something in his eyes that made the old lawyer pause. I want to understand the full scope of this. I want to know exactly what I'm dealing with before I make any moves. Vernon, waiting could cost you. I'm not waiting passively. Vernon stood, gathering the photos back into the folder. I'm gathering intelligence. There's a difference. Albert studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. You have a plan? The beginning of one. Vernon extended his hand. Thank you, Albert, for looking out for me. That's what family does, Albert replied, shaking his hand. Your father might have been a disaster, but you're not him. You're better, smarter. Don't let them take advantage of that. Vernon left the office with the folder under his arm and a cold clarity settling over him. He'd spent his entire adult life building something from nothing, fighting for every success. He learned early that in this world, you either controlled your own fate or someone else controlled it for you. Lindsay and Chad Harris were about to learn that lesson the hard way. Chapter 3, The Performance. The next 48 hours were theater. Vernon went to work, came home, made conversation with Lindsay about his upcoming birthday party. He even suggested she invite Kim, since you two have been spending so much time together lately. Lindsay had actually blushed at that, a flicker of guilt crossing her face before she masked it. That's sweet of you. Kim would love that. Friday afternoon, Vernon met Jonathan for lunch at their usual spot, an Italian place near the office. I need to tell you something, Jonathan said before they'd even ordered. I know about Lindsay, Vernon said calmly. I've known for 2 days. How long have you known? Jonathan looked relieved and guilty in equal measure. I saw them together about a month ago. I wasn't sure how to tell you, or if I even should. I'm sorry, V. I should have said something sooner. No, you did the right thing. Coming between a man and his marriage. That's dangerous territory. Vernon sipped his water. But I appreciate that you were looking out for me. What are you going to do? Throw myself a hell of a birthday party. Vernon smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. And after that, we'll see. Saturday arrived with unseasonably warm weather for November. Vernon and Lindsay's house filled with guests by 7 p.m. Colleagues from the firm, friend from their social circle, Jonathan and his family. Vernon played the gracious host, making sure everyone had drinks, laughing at jokes, accepting well wishes. He watched Lindsay across the room, seeing her now with new eyes. She looked beautiful in a red cocktail dress, her smile bright as she chatted with other guests. She'd always been good at performing, at being the perfect wife when the audience was watching. At 8 p.m., the doorbell rang. Vernon answered it himself. Chad Harris stood on his doorstep, looking confident in an expensive suit. Next to him, Lindsay appeared, having slipped outside to meet him. "Vernon," Chad said, extending his hand with practiced charm. "I hope you don't mind. Lindsay invited me. I've heard so much about you." Vernon shook his hand, noting the firm grip, the eye contact, the performance. "Any friend of my wife's is welcome. Come in." The party continued, though Vernon felt the shift in energy. Guests who didn't know about the affair found it odd that Lindsay had brought a male friend. Those who did know, and Vernon was discovering there were more than he'd realized, watched with uncomfortable fascination. At 9 p.m., Vernon tapped his glass for attention. The room quieted. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," he began. 43 years old. "Feels like just yesterday I was a broke kid with a dream and a calculator." Polite laughter rippled through the crowd. "I've built something I'm proud of, surrounded myself with people I trust. And I've learned that in life, you find out who people really are when the stakes are highest." He saw Lindsay's expression flicker. Uncertainty, perhaps a trace of fear. "So I want to make a toast," Vernon continued, raising his glass. "To new beginnings, to truth, and to—" "Actually," Lindsay interrupted, her voice too bright, too forced. She moved to Chad's side and took his hand. "Vernon, everyone, I have an announcement to make." The room went completely silent. "Chad and I are engaged," she said, lifting her left hand to show a diamond ring Vernon hadn't seen before. "We're getting married as soon as the divorce is final." The silence deepened. Someone gasped. Vernon saw Jonathan tense, ready to intervene, but Vernon remained perfectly still, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled. "Well," Vernon said, raising his glass higher. "Congratulations. That's wonderful news." He looked directly at Chad. "You'll need a good prenup. Trust me on that." The room erupted in uncomfortable laughter, people unsure whether to laugh, leave, or crawl under the furniture. Chad and Lindsay laughed too, though their laughter was uncertain. Vernon pulled out his phone, typed a quick message, and hit send. Then he moved through the crowd, accepting awkward congratulations and concerned whispers with the same calm demeanor he'd maintained all evening. An hour later, as guests began leaving with hasty goodbyes, Vernon's phone buzzed, then buzzed again, and again. He glanced at the screen. 44 missed calls and messages from a number he didn't recognize. He opened the messages. "Who the hell is this? What did you do? This is insane. Call me back now. I need your lawyer's contact number, please. I'm begging you. This is all a misunderstanding, Vernon, please." Vernon looked up to find Chad across the room, phone in hand, face pale as death. Their eyes met, and Vernon smiled. A real smile this time, cold and knowing. The game had begun. Chapter 4. The Unraveling. Sunday morning arrived with all the subtlety of a car crash. Vernon woke at 6, made coffee, and checked his phone. 73 messages now from Chad Harris, each more desperate than the last. Lindsay was still asleep upstairs, having drunk too much wine after the guests left. They'd barely spoken after the party. She'd gone to bed confused but satisfied, believing she'd seized control of the narrative. She had no idea the ground beneath her was already collapsing. Vernon's phone rang. "Albert Anthony, tell me you got it done," the lawyer said without preamble. Every detail. The timing was perfect. Vernon moved to his home office and closed the door. "What did your investigator find?" "More than we hoped for. Albert's voice carried grim satisfaction. Chad Hartley, or Harris, as he's calling himself now, has warrants in 2 states. Nothing major, but enough. More importantly, his financial records are a disaster. He's $300,000 in debt, multiple failed business ventures, and he's been living off credit cards and the generosity of various women for the past 5 years. And the current girlfriend? Ex-girlfriend, as of yesterday. Sonia Delgado, an attorney from Chicago. When my investigator contacted her with evidence of Chad's engagement to Lindsay, she was, let's say, she was highly motivated to cooperate. Albert paused. Sonia filed a fraud complaint this morning. Apparently, Chad borrowed $50,000 from her 3 months ago for a real estate deal that never existed. Vernon felt a grim satisfaction. So what happens now? Now, Chad Harris has multiple legal problems that appeared overnight. Civil fraud charges, potential criminal charges if the DA gets involved, and an extremely angry ex-girlfriend with connections in the legal community. Albert chuckled darkly. That phone call you made last night, sending Chad's real name and background to Sonia. That was the first domino. The rest are falling faster than I expected. Good. Vernon watched through the window as a car pulled up outside, Jonathan's SUV. His friend had texted earlier asking to come by. What about Lindsay? That's trickier. She hasn't committed any crimes, just adultery and poor judgment. But she's tied herself to a sinking ship, and she doesn't even know it yet. After hanging up with Albert, Vernon let Jonathan in through the back door. Linda took the kids to her mother's, Jonathan said, helping himself to coffee. She wanted me to check on you. We both did. I'm fine. You're not fine. Your wife announced her engagement to another man at your birthday party. Jonathan sat at the kitchen table. That's not fine, V. That's psychological warfare. Vernon joined him, cradling his coffee mug. What do you know about Chad Harris? Jonathan's expression darkened. After last night, I did some digging. Called a buddy who works in real estate downtown. Vernon, the guy's a ghost. No actual developments, no real projects. He floats around high-end events, makes connections with wealthy women, and disappears with their money. How did Lindsay meet him? Kim Skinner introduced them. Jonathan looked uncomfortable. Kim's been, I don't know how to say this without sounding like I'm piling on. Just say it. Kim's been enabling this whole thing. She's the one who introduced them, encouraged Lindsay to leave you, helped her hide the affair. Linda thinks Kim's jealous of what you and Lindsay had, or what you could have had. She's one of those people who can't stand seeing others happy. Vernon filed that information away. Kim Skinner, another problem to address. Upstairs, they heard movement. Lindsay was awake. I should go, Jonathan said, standing. But V, be careful. I know you're planning something. Just don't do anything that's going to blow back on you. After Jonathan left, Vernon returned to his office. His phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. This is Chad. We need to talk. In person. Please. Vernon deleted the message without responding. Lindsay appeared in the doorway an hour later, looking uncertain for the first time since he'd known about the affair. We should talk, she said. Should we? Vernon didn't look up from his laptop. Last night was, I know it was a shock, but it's been over between us for a long time, Vernon. You know that. He finally looked at her, really looked at her. The woman he'd married 10 years ago had been different. Younger, yes, but also kinder. Or maybe he'd just been too blind to see who she really was. How long have you been planning this? He asked. It wasn't planned. It just happened. Right. It just happened that you met someone, fell in love, got engaged, and decided to humiliate me at my own birthday party. All just coincidence. Lindsay's face hardened. You're never here, Vernon. Even when you're here, you're not here. I was lonely. Chad understands me. Chad's a con artist. She laughed bitterly. Of course you'd say that. You can't accept that someone might actually want to be with me for me, not for what they can get from me. The irony was almost funny. Does he know about the prenup we signed? Lindsay's expression shifted, a flicker of something calculating. We don't have a prenup. Actually, we do. You signed it 2 days before our wedding. It's in the safe, along with all our other important documents. Vernon stood, moving toward her. And according to the terms we both agreed to, infidelity means you get nothing in the divorce. Not the house, not the car, not a dime of spousal support. The color drained from Lindsay's face. You're bluffing. Call Albert if you don't believe me. Vernon walked past her toward the stairs. I'm going out. Don't be here when I get back. You can stay with Chad. Or Kim. I don't particularly care. Vernon, we're done talking, Lindsay. Have your attorney contact Albert. We'll handle this the civilized way, through lawyers. He left her standing in the office, her carefully constructed plan crumbling around her. Chapter 5, The Cascade. Monday morning, Vernon arrived at his office to find Jonathan already there with two other people, a woman in her early 40s and a younger man Vernon didn't recognize. Vernon Salas, the woman said, extending her hand. I'm Sonia Delgado. I believe we have a mutual acquaintance. Vernon shook her hand, noting the firm grip and direct gaze. Chad Harris. Chad Hartley, she corrected with a bitter smile, though he's used several names over the years. I thought I was careful. I'm an attorney, for God's sake. I should have seen through him. Why are you here? Because I want to help you destroy him. Sonia opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick file. This is everything I have on Chad. Bank records, emails, text messages, evidence of fraud. He borrowed $50,000 from me for a fake real estate development. He also borrowed money from at least 3 other women I've been able to identify. One of them is here. The younger man stepped forward. Actually, I'm Neil Stanley. My mother is Eva Downs. Chad borrowed $75,000 from her 2 years ago. She's too embarrassed to come forward publicly, but she's willing to provide evidence. Vernon looked at Jonathan, who nodded. They contacted me yesterday after reading about what happened at your party. It's all over social media. Someone recorded Lindsay's announcement. Let me see. Jonathan pulled up his phone and showed Vernon the video. Someone had posted it with the caption, most awkward birthday party ever. It had 50,000 views and counting. In the video, Lindsay's announcement was clear, as was Vernon's calm response about the prenup. The comments were brutal. Who announces their engagement at someone else's birthday party? The husband is a legend for that comeback. She's trash and the new guy looks like a sleaze. He dodged a bullet. Vernon handed the phone back and turned to Sonia. What exactly do you want to happen here? I want Chad prosecuted for fraud. I want everyone to know what he is. And I want to make sure he can't do this to anyone else. Sonia's voice was steel. Your lawyer, Albert Anthony, suggested I come to you. He said you were planning something. Vernon made a decision. Conference room. Now, all of you. 20 minutes later, they were gathered around the table. Vernon, Jonathan, Sonia, Neil, and Albert, who'd arrived in response to Vernon's urgent call. Here's what we know, Vernon began, writing on the whiteboard. Chad Hartley, a.k.a. Chad Harris, is a con artist who targets wealthy women. He's defrauded multiple people, owes money to several others, and is currently engaged to my wife, who believes he's a successful real estate developer. He's also got another problem, Albert added. Those warrants I mentioned? One just got upgraded. Turns out Chad failed to appear for a civil judgment hearing in Florida 6 months ago. There's now a bench warrant for his arrest. Neil leaned forward. So we just call the police? Not yet, Vernon said, because arresting him now doesn't accomplish everything we need. Lindsay still believes in him. She'd probably bail him out, stand by him, play the victim. We need to destroy the illusion completely. How? Sonia asked. Vernon turned to Albert. The prenup I mentioned to Lindsay. How airtight is it? Very. She gets nothing if the marriage ends due to infidelity. You have photos, evidence, multiple witnesses. It's ironclad, but she could drag it out, make it ugly. She could try, Albert acknowledged, but she'd lose. It would just cost everyone time and money. Vernon thought for a moment. What if she wanted the divorce? What if she was eager to end things quickly? Jonathan caught on first. You want to make her think she can do better. That Chad's the better option. Exactly. Vernon turned back to Sonia. You said Chad borrowed money from at least 3 other women. Can you contact them? I already have. They're all willing to talk. Good. Here's what we're going to do. Vernon began outlining his plan, and with each detail, the others began to smile. Chapter 6, The Setup. Tuesday afternoon, Lindsay sat in Kim Skinner's apartment, nursing a glass of wine and catastrophizing. He's bluffing about the prenup, Kim insisted. Vernon's a softie. He'll give you a fair settlement just to avoid conflict. You don't know him like I do, Lindsay said. When Vernon makes up his mind about something, he doesn't budge. Her phone buzzed. Chad calling again. You should answer him, Kim said. He's been trying to reach you all day. Lindsay picked up. Chad? What's wrong? Baby, we need to talk. Can you come over? I'm at Kim's. What's going on? Just, please come over. It's important. Lindsay exchanged a look with Kim, then gathered her purse. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Chad's apartment was in a trendy building downtown. Modern, expensive, a testament to his supposed success. He answered the door looking haggard, his usual polish absent. Chad, what's wrong? You look terrible. He pulled her inside and closed the door. There's been a misunderstanding. Some woman from Chicago is making accusations about me. She's insane, making up stories. What kind of stories? She's saying I borrowed money from her and never paid it back. It's ridiculous. I never borrowed anything. Chad paced the living room. But she's filed a complaint, and now other people are coming forward with similar stories. It's a conspiracy, Lindsay. Someone's orchestrating this. Lindsay felt cold dread settling in her stomach. Vernon, your husband has serious connections. He could be behind this. No, Vernon wouldn't. He's not vindictive like that. Chad stopped pacing and looked at her. Really? Because right now it feels like he's destroying my life. I've had calls from 3 different lawyers, 2 reporters, and the police want to talk to me about some old warrant from Florida that I cleared up years ago. The police. It's nothing. Just bureaucratic nonsense. But combined with these false accusations. Chad sat down, putting his head in his hands. I'm sorry, baby. I don't want you to worry about this. We'll figure it out. Lindsay sat beside him, but her mind was racing. Vernon was smart, brilliant even. Could he really have orchestrated all of this in just 3 days? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You should know who you're marrying. Check your email. What is it? Chad asked. Nothing. Spam. But Lindsay opened her email, and her heart sank. The email contained bank records, legal documents, and testimony from 4 different women, all claiming Chad had borrowed money from them, promised to invest it in real estate developments, and then disappeared. The amounts totaled nearly $300,000. Lindsay? You okay? She looked at Chad, really looked at him. Did you borrow money from someone named Sonia Delgado? His face went pale. That's complicated. Yes or no, Chad? It was a business loan. She's trying to. What about Eva Downs? Or Betty McIntyre? Or Myra Richard? Lindsay stood, backing away from him. There are 4 women here, saying you defrauded them. It's not what it looks like. Then what is it, Chad? Because right now it looks like you're a con artist who targeted me because Vernon has money. No. I love you, Lindsay. This is all. Stop. Lindsay grabbed her purse. I need to think. Don't call me. She left Chad's apartment in a daze and drove aimlessly for an hour, her mind spinning. Finally, she ended up at the one place she never expected to go, Albert Anthony's office. The receptionist looked surprised but ushered her in. Albert sat behind his desk, looking unsurprised to see her. Mrs. Salas, he said calmly. What can I do for you? I need to know the truth about the prenup. Albert pulled a file from his drawer and slid it across the desk. You signed it 2 days before your wedding. It clearly states that in the event of divorce due to infidelity, you receive no spousal support and no division of assets acquired during the marriage. The house, cars, investments, all remain Vernon's property. Lindsay felt sick. I don't remember signing this. You did. There's your signature, right there. It was witnessed by myself and another attorney. Albert's expression was impassive. I advised Vernon against such a harsh agreement, but he insisted. He said he'd been burned before and wanted to protect what he'd built. He never told me what it said. You should have read it before signing. Lindsay stared at the document, seeing her elegant signature at the bottom. She did remember signing papers before the wedding, had been so excited about the honeymoon Vernon had planned that she'd barely paid attention. There's something else you should know, Albert continued. Vernon filed for divorce this morning. You'll be served papers tomorrow. The room tilted. What? He's proceeding with the divorce on grounds of adultery. Given the evidence, including your public announcement of your engagement to another man, This will be straightforward. You'll be divorced within 60 days, possibly sooner if you don't contest. I have to contest. I have nothing, Albert. Vernon controlled all our finances. That was your choice. You had access to all the accounts. You chose to spend rather than save. Albert stood, signaling the meeting was over. My advice? Hire a good attorney, cooperate with the divorce proceedings, and move on with your life. Fighting this will only cost you money you don't have. Lindsay left the office in a fog. Outside, she sat in her car and called Kim. He's divorcing me, she said when Kim answered. And Chad's a fraud. He's a con artist, Kim. Everything was a lie. Kim was silent for a moment. Okay, we can fix this. Come back to my place. We'll figure something out. But as Lindsay drove, she realized there was nothing to figure out. She'd gambled everything on Chad Harris, and she'd lost. Vernon had won. The question was, what else did he have planned? Chapter 7. The Exposure. Wednesday morning brought news that spread through their social circle like wildfire. Chad Hartley had been arrested. Vernon was in his office when Jonathan rushed in with his phone. It's all over the news. The headline read, "Local man arrested on multiple fraud charges." The article detailed Chad's arrest at his apartment, the multiple women who'd filed complaints, and his history of similar cons in other cities. There was even a photo, Chad in handcuffs, looking nothing like the confident charmer for Vernon's birthday party. Sonia really came through, Jonathan said. She coordinated with the other victims and the DA's office. They've built an airtight case. Vernon felt no satisfaction, only grim resolution. This isn't about revenge. It's about justice. Keep telling yourself that. Jonathan sat down. Linda says Lindsay's been calling around, trying to find someone to loan her money for a lawyer. No one's returning her calls. That's not surprising. She humiliated me publicly. People in our circle don't forget that kind of thing. His phone rang. Lindsay. Vernon considered letting it go to voicemail, but something made him answer. Yes. Vernon, please. I need to talk to you. Lindsay's voice was ragged, desperate. Just 5 minutes. Against his better judgment, Vernon agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near his office. She arrived looking like she hadn't slept, her usual polish replaced by exhaustion and fear. Thank you for coming, she said, sitting across from him. You have 5 minutes. Chad's in jail. Did you know? I heard. Did you have anything to do with it? Vernon sipped his coffee. I made a phone call. One phone call, to someone who deserved to know the truth about who Chad really was. What happened after that was a natural consequence of his actions catching up with him. So you did orchestrate this? No, Lindsay. I didn't make Chad defraud multiple women. I didn't make him lie to you. I didn't make you have an affair. Vernon leaned forward. I simply stopped protecting you from reality. That's all. Tears filled her eyes. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. But Vernon, we were married for 10 years. That has to count for something. It did count for something. Until you threw it away at my birthday party in front of everyone I know and respect. Vernon's voice was calm, but cold. You made your choice, Lindsay. You chose Chad over me. You chose humiliation over dignity. You chose greed over loyalty. I was angry. You were never home, never present. I felt like I didn't matter to you. So you found someone who made you feel like you mattered. I understand that. What I don't understand is the cruelty. You could have asked for a divorce quietly. We could have ended this with dignity. Instead, you ambushed me at my own birthday party and announced your engagement like it was some kind of victory. Kim said. Kim Skinner is not your friend, Vernon interrupted. She's a bitter, jealous person who encouraged you to destroy your marriage because she can't stand seeing anyone happy. But you're an adult, Lindsay. You made your own choices. Lindsay wiped her eyes. What happens now? You sign the divorce papers. You move out of the house by the end of the week. You take your personal belongings and whatever assets you brought into the marriage, which, according to our prenup, means your jewelry and your car. I have nothing, Vernon. No savings, no family to help me. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. Vernon stood. You wanted your freedom. Congratulations. You have it. He left her sitting in the coffee shop, tears streaming down her face, and felt nothing but emptiness. Back at the office, Albert was waiting with news. The divorce papers are ready. She'll be served today. Good. How long until it's final? If she doesn't contest, which she can't afford to do, 60 days. Maybe less if the judge is efficient. Vernon nodded, then asked the question that had been gnawing at him. Did I go too far? Albert studied him for a long moment. Do you remember what I taught you about character? Keeping your word even when it costs you. That's part of it. The other part is understanding the difference between justice and vengeance. Justice is about making things right. Vengeance is about making someone suffer. Albert paused. Chad Hartley defrauded multiple women. He was going to defraud your wife and, by extension, steal from you. Exposing him was justice. Lindsay betrayed you in the cruelest way possible. Protecting your assets and your dignity through the legal system is justice. You haven't made anyone suffer beyond the natural consequences of their choices. Vernon wanted to believe that. But part of him knew there was more to it, a darker satisfaction in watching them fall. He'd been powerless as a child, watching his father destroy their family. Now, as an adult, he'd seize control. Maybe too much control. What about Kim Skinner? Jonathan asked, joining them. She enabled all of this. Is she going to face any consequences? Vernon had thought about Kim, the friend who'd introduced Lindsay to Chad, encouraged the affair, helped plan the humiliation. But what could he do? She hadn't broken any laws, hadn't defrauded anyone. She was just a miserable person spreading misery. Sometimes, Vernon said slowly, the best revenge is letting someone live with their own bitterness. Kim's punishment is being Kim. But even as he said it, an idea began forming. Kim Skinner might not face legal consequences, but that didn't mean she'd escape unscathed. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. Friday afternoon, Kim Skinner received an unexpected visit at her boutique, a small clothing store she ran with her family's money. Sonia Delgado walked in with a confident stride, flanked by two other women Kim didn't recognize. Can I help you? Kim asked, immediately defensive. Kim Skinner. Sonia extended her hand. I'm Sonia Delgado. These are Eva Downs and Betty McIntyre. We're all victims of Chad Hartley's fraud. We'd like to talk to you about your role and what happened. Kim's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because we have text messages between you and Lindsay Salas where you encouraged her to leave her husband for Chad. You introduced them, knowing Chad had a history of targeting wealthy women. Sonia pulled out her phone. You also helped Lindsay plan the timing of her announcement at Vernon's birthday party for maximum humiliation. That's... Lindsay and I are friends. I was being supportive. Eva stepped forward. You were being malicious. You knew Chad was a con artist. You dated him briefly yourself 2 years ago, before he moved on to wealthier targets. Kim's expression cracked. That's not true. It is true, Betty said quietly. We have evidence. Chad kept records, names, photos, details about the women he'd targeted and the people who'd introduced him to them. You were his accomplice, whether you realized it or not. I never took money from anyone. No, but you enabled someone who did. Sonia leaned against the counter. Now, we're not here to press charges. Proving criminal conspiracy would be difficult and time-consuming. But we are here to make sure everyone knows what you did. You can't. We can and we will. Eva pulled out a folder. We've compiled everything. Text messages, photos, testimony from multiple victims. We're going to share this information with everyone in your social circle, every business associate, every family member. By Monday morning, everyone will know that Kim Skinner helps con artists target vulnerable women. Kim's boutique was her pride and joy, funded by her trust fund, but sustained by customers from their social circle, wealthy women who value discretion and reputation. If word got out that she'd been involved with a con artist, why are you doing this? Kim whispered. Because actions have consequences, Sonia said. You helped destroy a marriage and enabled a criminal. That can't go unpunished. After they left, Kim sat in her empty store and realized that Vernon Salas had orchestrated this too. He'd connected these women, given them the evidence, pointed them in her direction. He'd destroyed Chad, exposed Lindsay, and now he was systematically dismantling everyone who'd played a role in his humiliation. She picked up her phone to call Lindsay, then stopped. What was the point? Lindsay was facing her own ruin. They'd both gambled on bringing down Vernon Salas, and they'd lost spectacularly. Meanwhile, Vernon was having dinner with Jonathan and his family. Linda had made pot roast, and the kids were arguing about which movie to watch after dinner. "Uncle Vernon, are you sad?" Jonathan's youngest daughter, Sarah, asked suddenly. "No, sweetheart." "Why?" "Because you got divorced." "My friend Emma's parents got divorced, and she was really sad." Vernon smiled gently. Sometimes grown-ups realize they're better off apart than together. It's sad, but it's also okay. After dinner, after the kids had gone to bed, Vernon and Jonathan sat on the back porch with beers. "How are you really doing?" Jonathan asked. Vernon was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. I should feel vindicated, right? I exposed a con artist, protected my assets, got away from a bad marriage. But mostly I just feel empty. That's normal. You spent 10 years with Lindsay. You built a life together, even if it wasn't the life you thought it was. I keep thinking about what Albert said, the difference between justice and vengeance. I did what was necessary to protect myself, but I also enjoyed watching them fail. Does that make me a bad person? It makes you human." Jonathan took a swig of his beer. "Vernon, they tried to humiliate you, steal from you, and destroy what you built. You defended yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. But where does it end? Chad's in jail. Lindsay's broke and alone. Kim's about to lose her reputation and probably her business. At what point does defending yourself become overkill? When you do something you can't live with." Jonathan looked at his friend seriously. "Can you live with what you've done?" Vernon thought about it. Chad Hartley had defrauded multiple women and would have defrauded more if left unchecked. Lindsay had chosen to betray him in the cruelest way possible. Kim had enabled it all. Every consequence they faced was a direct result of their own choices. "Yes," Vernon finally said. "I can live with it." "Then you have your answer." Chapter 9. The New Beginning. 3 months later, Vernon sat in his office, reviewing quarterly reports. Salas Consulting had its best year on record. The publicity from the divorce, while uncomfortable, had somehow enhanced his reputation. People saw him as smart, resilient, someone who didn't let personal disasters derail his professional success. Albert knocked on the door and entered without waiting for permission, a privilege of being Vernon's mentor and friend. "Final divorce decree came through," Albert said, dropping a folder on the desk. "It's done. You're officially single." Vernon opened the folder and scanned the documents. Simple, clean, final. Lindsay had signed without contest, taken her personal belongings and her car, and moved to another state to live with a cousin. Last he'd heard, she was working as a receptionist and living in a one-bedroom apartment. "How do you feel?" Albert asked. "Like I closed a chapter of my life that should have ended years ago." Vernon closed the folder. "What about Chad?" "Pled guilty to avoid trial. Got 3 to 5 years. Will probably serve 2 with good behavior. He'll be in his 40s when he gets out, broke and with a record. His con artist days are over." "And Kim Skinner?" "Closed her boutique last month. Turns out when your entire customer base learns you enabled a con artist, they stop shopping with you." Albert sat down. "She's moved away too. Fresh start somewhere else." Vernon should have felt triumphant. Instead, he just felt tired. "There's something else," Albert said, his tone shifting. "I've been thinking about what you told me, about feeling empty after all this, about wondering if you went too far. And I think you're asking the wrong question. The question isn't whether you went too far in protecting yourself. The question is, what are you going to do now that you've protected everything worth protecting?" Vernon looked at his mentor. "What do you mean? You spent your childhood watching your father destroy your family. You spent your adult life building something that could never be destroyed the same way. You succeeded. You built a fortress, a successful business, financial security, legal protection. But Vernon, you can't live in a fortress forever. At some point, you have to come out and actually live." The words hit harder than Vernon expected. He'd spent so much energy on building, protecting, defending that he'd forgotten what it was all for. "I don't know how to do that," Vernon admitted. "Sure you do. You just have to remember why you started building in the first place." Albert stood. "You didn't build Salas Consulting just to make money. You built it to help people solve impossible problems. You didn't protect your assets just to be wealthy. You did it to honor your mother's sacrifices and prove you were different from your father. Don't lose sight of that. After Albert left, Vernon sat alone in his office, watching the city lights. His phone buzzed, a text from Jonathan. Pizza night at our place. Linda says you're coming whether you like it or not. See you at 6. Vernon smiled. He texted back, I'll bring dessert. That evening, surrounded by Jonathan's family, Vernon realized something. He'd won. Chad was in prison, Lindsay was out of his life, Kim's reputation was destroyed. He defended himself against people who tried to hurt him, and he'd done it without crossing any lines he couldn't live with. But winning wasn't enough. It never had been. As Sarah insisted Uncle Vernon help her with a puzzle, and Jonathan's sons argued about video games, and Linda brought out homemade pie, Vernon felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. The fortress he'd built was secure. Now it was time to live in the world outside it. Later that night, back home in his now quiet house, Vernon made a decision. He called Albert. I want to start a foundation, Vernon said. Something to help kids from broken homes get education and counseling. Something that would have helped me when I was young. That's a good idea, Albert said warmly. A very good idea. And I want to cut back my hours at the firm. Jonathan's been asking to take on more responsibility. It's time I let him. Also good. What else? I don't know yet, Vernon admitted. But I'm going to figure it out. One step at a time. That's all any of us can do, Albert said. Your mother would be proud of you, Vernon. You became the man she hoped you'd be. After hanging up, Vernon walked through his house. The house he'd bought to save his marriage, which had instead become the site of its ending. He'd redecorate, he decided. Make it his own. Maybe even host more dinners. Fill it with friends and laughter instead of silent resentment. His phone buzzed one last time, a message from an unknown number. Vernon's jaw tightened, expecting another desperate plea from Lindsay or an angry threat from Kim. Instead, it was from Sonia Delgado. Thank you for connecting us all. Because of you, 4 women got justice, and Chad Harris can't hurt anyone else. We're starting a support group for fraud victims. If you know anyone who needs it, send them our way. You're a good man, Vernon Salas. Vernon saved the number and replied, Thank you. And you're welcome. If you ever need help with anything, let me know. He set down his phone and poured himself a whiskey. Good scotch, the kind Albert had taught him to appreciate. He raised the glass in a silent toast. To truth, to justice, to moving forward, to new beginnings. Vernon Salas had spent 3 months tearing down the people who tried to destroy him. Now it was time to build something better. Not a fortress, but a life worth living. The game was over. He'd won. Now the real work began. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.